Hi everyone, welcome to Value. So today we're looking at Veru and the stock is down a whopping 53.56%. Nothing will ever prepare you for this. Like, no matter how long you've been in the market, it's gut-wrenching. Like, nothing sugarcoats it. And it's just a bit of reality. Like, the stock kind of just took a negative spin, particularly with the advisory committee coming together and deciding on an 8 to 5 that no, they did not believe that the benefits were outweighing the risks. They believed those risks were quite high given the uncertainties. And I'd say it's more around those uncertainties. So the FDA is going to probably look at it and kind of see it as the benefits are really good, but there are a lot of uncertainties. You're going to have to do another trial, and potentially they could get an approval with the condition that they do the trial alongside it. Or maybe the FDA may think about things in a different way, where they go, you need to give us some more data, but we don't want you to take forever to do it as well, because it could be several months before they get that done again, and by then like too much time has really passed, and it's not the FDA's job to really be pushing things that far, because what's the point of an EUA if you're going to push something that far? It's just ridiculous. So it makes more sense to really just approve it and then basically have that trial as a condition on the side, which I think the company itself feels like that's the way to go as well when they made their announcement. But yeah, like whoa, looking at the share price, and you must just be feeling nothing. No one feels good today. No one feels good looking at a $6.97, share price. But I think, given the absence of news, potentially the stock could head down a little lower. But I think at this current price, there's a situation where it does start to get a little bit too cheap. And I think that's the pricing you're looking at in a sense, because we've only heard from the advisory committee, while the FDA is possibly going to decide in a different way. They're known actually to decide, like well over 1/5 of the decisions where they overturn it. So out of every 5 decisions, one of them they usually decide in a different way. And it's usually they decide differently in something where there's a split opinion. There are cases where they have completely decided against the advisory committee, where the advisory committee was overwhelmingly with one decision, but the FDA decided in a different one. Because what the FDA decides is not purely what the advisory committee says. They also take into account the available kind of treatments available, and then decide, hey, is this actually worth the risk? Because if you actually consider, the advisory committee just looks at the data. They're not really considering that much outside of things, whereas the FDA is much more accountable to the public, and they are much more inclined to approve something if they believe it's going to help the public. And that's the difference between the FDA as well. They're gonna they consider a much wider picture, whereas the advisory committee does not. So I think I want you to keep that in mind and not feel like this advisory committee decision was that heavy on the FDA. I mean, it has some influence, but it definitely is not going to be the not the factor that decides everything. It's merely one factor out of many that comes into that decision. So if we look at the volume that was traded, was about 36 million shares, where the average was about 6 million shares. For a stock that got shot down that much, it's surprising that actually not that many shares actually got sold down, which kind of makes me think that there actually is a lot of people that are holding on for the ultimate decision from the FDA, because I've seen volumes of 50 to 60 million shares trade, whereas this 36 million isn't entirely that much higher, like that high of volume. It's in the middle, like it's not on the high side, but it's not on the low side. So it kind of makes me think that, hey, there's a lot of people that are in it for long term and are holding on to it, whereas there are some people that were trading the stock, a lot of people shorting in the stock, which that's the one thing as well. People that are shorting the stock, they're going to want to recover that stock as well. So potentially we could see people that believe in the stock buy some more, and we could also see people who want to cover their short positions buy some more, and potentially we see this kind of stable out for now. And then I think the market's probably going to wait and see what happens next, because it is still very much open no matter what's happened with the advisory committee. They were more or less addressing the elephant in the room, which was this trial 3 sample was not large enough. Like, the amount of people that participated needed to be they thought at least 300 people. They thought ideally 500 people, but if they couldn't do 500 people, they wanted at least 300. And they thought that would on a minimal basis provide some more reliable data. So I think that's particularly the part where Veru is going to potentially have to do another trial with at least minimum of 300 people, because they discussed on question 4 how Veru could redesign their trial to kind of get more reliable data, and that was kind of one of the criterias that someone thought it was 500 was ideal, someone thought it was too high. They thought actually minimum 300 would actually do it. So that's the problem. Like, you don't really want Veru going for like 300 people and then coming back again and saying, oh, actually that's not large enough of a sample. So I think FDA is going to take some time to think about this. If they advise Veru on anything, it really has to sit, because they can't just waste too much time, particularly given the current situation, and also given this the constraints on the company. Like, the company has limited financials, and they need to get a move on. They can't just sit here. They've got a whole infectious disease team just waiting on standby, basically, on an approval to happen. So potentially there's a chance that we'll hear from the FDA soon enough, like probably not this week, but maybe next week or maybe the week after. Like, that would probably be the earliest. Like, it could take much longer, because sometimes these things do take time. The person that's reviewing and making this decision, they're not going to have an easy time. They've got to decide whether they want to approve it, and then also decide if they should attach some conditions onto this. And they've got to also look at what the benefit to society is. Like, if they see some benefit that could not be gained from the current treatments available on the market, then they'd be very inclined to approve it. But the other question would be, like, if they did approve it, what kind of conditions do they need to put on? And that's the part where they will have to think about it. So they won't be rushed to quickly decide on something and then put something out. They will think about this in a very thorough way, and then come back to the market and then tell Veru what the decision is. So yeah, I think we're just gonna have to be patient. There's really no choice. If you look at the stock price, it's either sell out or just be patient and wait and see what this ultimate decision is. I still feel like things are still 50-50, regardless of what's been said in this advisory committee, what kind of headlines you're seeing in the current news. I think it was just more the elephant in the room, and we all knew that. We all had an idea of it. Whether we kind of accepted it or not, we thought it would be enough, because we have a CEO who just loves to talk it up, but it doesn't really happen that way. Like, the CEO said, oh, it'll be approved in 60 days. No, it didn't. The CEO said he had a meeting and the FDA accepted the size and the samples. And no, it did not seem like it. It did not seem they had much confidence in it, and hence why they called an advisory committee. So yeah, like, I think one thing is you got to be careful of those words of the CEO, who is rather optimistic, and who knows how, he likes to spin it. So that's one thing about investing. You really got to bring an extra judgment to it, and then scrutinize everything that everyone says, because at the end of the day, we don't know how true anything is really. And also that's how you also manage your risk. If anything could ever help you in the future, you look at the whole idea and go, before this decision, the stock was at $15, and maybe you guys are kicking yourself for not selling or taking some profit at $15. And that's very normal to think about it that way, and do not kick yourself if you didn't sell or didn't take any profit, because sometimes we can be a bit more hopeful. But I want you to consider that, hey, in the future, in order to minimize risk, potentially you may sell something when it does come to a high price. You sell a fraction of it just to reduce some of the risk. Like that, and then potentially you just have money on the side, and if you believe in something, then potentially you can average down as well. So regardless of what stock it is, it is a risk kind of approach to stocks and to the market, that you always have to be just very mindful of, or else days like this, you do not want it to just cripple your portfolio. Like it's a tough one to take, and like there's no easy way around it. But I think overall, it's just another waiting game. We just wait and we just see, and remember, it's still 50-50. Like, I did have a feeling that the advisory committee would pick this up, because that was the questions posed to the advisory committee around the sample size. So it means the FDA also had that kind of feeling, and they kind of wanted the advisory committee to say the same thing, so they can just have some more certainty. And I think the ultimate decision is them approving it, with the condition of doing another trial, and that actually makes the most sense. Like the advisory committee, one person actually mentioned the same thing. So that's the thing. One person advisory committee saw it in the same view, and I think the FDA is also going to pick up on that, and then also decide in a very similar way, and go, actually, it's worth approving, because if you do not approve it, you're just going to go on another, it's just going to be another several months before this ever really comes back, and that's also the consideration you also will have now as well, that potentially you may just want to get out of the stock, because if this gets delayed, the share price could go a little bit lower as well. So I think you want to just consider that, hey, these risks are real, and sometimes we can't be too stubborn, but also at the same time, it's about whether you believe this or not. And at the end of the day, like, you could have all the belief in the world, but no one actually knows the FDA. No one knows how they're going to decide, and that's the problem as well, that we're in the market, we have a conviction, but sometimes it just doesn't turn out our way, because these decisions are beyond us. It's sometimes it's a government body deciding things, sometimes it's economic factors that come into play, and it can just be really brutal sometimes. So I think the biggest thing we can take away from this as well is just how to manage our risk. But for now, like, if you hold the stock, and you don't mind holding and you accept the risk, then keep waiting. Wait for that good news to come along, wait for the share price to kind of zip back up, and then you can make that decision whether you want to take some off the table, or if you feel like you really can't take this risk anymore, and you feel like it's just something you just want to get out of, then you can always sell as well. There is really no right decision, because if you sell and you buy into a better stock, then potentially things come back in that other stock, and none the wiser, right? There's all sorts of approaches in investing. It's the best one is the one that suits you, and it helps you manage your own risk. There's nothing really I can say that kind of decides anything. Like I personally look at it and I go, like the advisory committee said stuff, and like I think the FDA will take into account, but I don't think that much changed in the general scheme of things. I think it just basically shot down the whole idea that Veru could get a full approval with no other attachments, but that is not the case. The best Veru can hope is a approval with a trial 3 condition attached. And like a redoing the current trial anyway. And the worst they could get is full decline. But it's likely that if they do get any decline, it'll be a request for more information, and basically that will take them many months to put together again. And the market's not going to like that, and the market's just really, really going to hate that. The market's going to see it in the sense that things aren't looking great. You don't have enough financials to kind of do another trial, because it's going to take you many quarters, because you're going to have to put 1 quarter to put together and then 2 more quarters to really get the result, which they may only just have enough money to get to that end, but likely they'll have to raise more money, which the market will not like, and they will sell it down. So I think that you want to consider that as a real risk. But they could also do a scenario where they aren't as tough on Veru, where they go, we don't approve it, but we need you to follow up on these trial results, or potentially just do another addition of people, right? Because they could potentially go, hey, you've done this many people, could you add another 100 people? Could you do another trial with 100 people and just add those 2 results together? And then potentially they could just simplify it that way, though I doubt it will be the case, because most cases they want a trial to be a very complete trial, rather than something that's just stitched together. But I mean, it's an option if the FDA feels like it might be just enough to put it together. But that's enough rambling for me anyway. I could say all the different scenarios that are available, but at the end of the day, it's still a waiting game, and it's still very 50-50. I don't want you to think this is the end, and I don't want you to think that what the advisory committee said was basically the be-all and end-all. Very much not, basically advisory committee came in, they're like consultants, they gave an opinion, FDA will take it away and they will think about it themselves, and then after that we will hear from them around that decision, and it's likely to be a matter of weeks rather than a matter of days. I know you do not want to hear that being the case, because we all want to know now, particularly with the share price looking like that. But sometimes investing is very much about patience, and sometimes the patience will pay off, and let's hope that the patience does pay off here. Until then, good luck investing, everyone, and if you've got any comments or questions, just post below. Until then, good luck investing, everyone, and hang in there. If this, share price will just be very volatile in the current times, especially with the absence of any news. But remember as well, they still got other countries that have not actually made any decisions yet. You still got Europe, you still got UK, you've still got Canada, you still got Australia. So things may not be the ideal case right now in terms of the FDA, given the advisory committee decision. But there are still many other decisions to be made. There is other kind of countries that will consider this as well, and they may actually look at how the advisory committee looked at it, and they may decide otherwise as well. So I think that's one thing you also want to look at as well, is that there are other countries. It's not the end, and on any good news, the stock will come back. So do not fear it as much, Try to just put it in the bottom drawer and just come back to it when there is more news. If you decide you want to continue holding anyway. Yeah, until then, I'll see you next time.